Founded in 1703 by Tsar Peter the Great, the former Russian capital of St. Petersburg sits upon the Neva River on the Gulf of Finland. According to macro trends, the population of St. Petersburg is over 5.5 million people. Second only to Moscow in terms of its vastness, the city is world-renowned for its pristine architecture and cultural importance. Whether the famous Nevsky Prospect or the renowned Winter Palace, St. Petersburg is full of remarkable cultural elements. Perhaps the most famous of these is the bronze Horseman statue, which is made particularly well known in a poem by Alexander Pushkin published in 1833 by the same name. And it is this statue, or rather the rock that forms its base, that forms the basis of this documentary. For while the depiction of Peter the Great heroically pointing towards the Neva certainly seems impressive, the real purported example of Russian ingenuity and genius resides within the pedestal rock itself. Now you might be thinking, what makes this rock so important? For one, the Thunderstone is somewhat of an enigma. It is far from a typical piece of Rapakivi granite. Researchers in a chapter of a book edited by Elena Panova on the history of natural stone in St. Petersburg contend that the boulder is actually composed of 4 fragments of various sizes. The current stone, however, stands at a remarkable 21 feet, and although it has been up for dispute, it has been purported by some to weigh as much as 1,200 tons. The statue itself was commissioned in the late 1860s by Catherine the Great. French sculptor Etienne Maurice Falconet, having just been asked to commission the project, purportedly already by then believed that a rock should be used as at the base of the statue. This was to symbolize the difficulties over which Peter the Great had triumphed. Yet the excavation and transportation of the enormous boulder north of the Gulf of Finland to the sea would be a monumental effort in its own right. The significance of this feat of engineering is outlined extensively in Natasha's Dance by Orlando Figes. It took the remarkable ingenuity of Greek engineer Marinos Karbaris to excavate the 660,000-kilogram monolith, which was then transported across the icy winter plains via the use of pulleys and rails resembling something along the lines of possibly the world's first use of ball bearings. It was later transported the rest of the 13 kilometers to St. Petersburg on a specially constructed barge, flanked on either side by massive Imperial Russian warships. Workers and masons chipped away at the monolithic structure all the while, and after over 18 months, the Thunderstone, much reduced in size, had arrived at the capital. Unveiled along with the rest of the bronze horseman statue in 1782, the transportation and carving of the Thunderstone represented the culmination of years of hard work and the fruits of a multinational effort. For truly, what better object to establish as the base of the centerpiece of a city that, as Figes states, was constructed largely with foreign stone and imports from Germany, Italy, and the Middle East. And yet, this stone, often cited as being the largest ever transported by humans alone, soon came to symbolize not international engagement, but Russian ingenuity and uniqueness. As if it were not enough that Falconet had to flee Russia due to disputes with Catherine the Great prior to the unveiling of the statue, Thunder Rock itself soon became a symbol of something uniquely Russian in character. This may be in part a reflection of the inscription on the side, Catherine II to Peter I. Although showing respect for Peter the Great and his many reforms was undoubtedly politically motivated, it has the effect of creating a sense of greatness in the bold actions of the Russian leadership. The aforementioned poem, The Bronze Horseman, also had a potential hand to play in creating something of a myth out of the rock. Although many speculate that Pushkin had no particular message in mind when he composed this work, many have nonetheless interpreted it to represent an analogy of the grand decisions of Russia's rulers as contrasted with the existence of the common Russian citizen. After all, St. Petersburg was constructed with enormous human toll on a marshland so close to the sea that parts of the landscape had to be raised before any buildings could be constructed. What better way to parallel this than the moving of a massive rock weighing over 500,000 kilograms to create a statue of a respected leader? The famous Thunderstone is significant in other ways to Russians as well.
Балтике основать и назвать онный город Санкт-Петербургом. Выбрал место хорошее, и река есть, и море, ко всем странам путь. Да вот незадача, камень на том пути лежит, не пройти, не проехать.
In this short film by Mountain of Gems, which is a remarkably popular Russian animation company whose high-quality animations nonetheless have been speculated as being resemblant of propaganda, a number of foreign experts attempt to lend their expertise in helping Peter the Great remove the stone that blocks his vision of St. Petersburg. Although the efforts of highly characterized German, Italian, and Chinese individuals are valiant, they ultimately all fail. In the end, none of these foreign individuals was able to successfully devise any method or means by which the stone could actually be moved or relocated.
Тут солдат по лесу идет, песню маршевую исполняет, домой возвращается.
Наш могучий император, наш державный великан.
However, Peter the Great eventually crosses paths with a simple Russian soldier. It is this soldier who ultimately recommends that a statue of Peter should be made out of the rock. Peter, of course, thinks that this is a brilliant idea, so essentially this simple Russian soldier succeeded where foreigners had consistently failed. In fact, the animation seems to appear to argue that the creation of the Thunderstone, as well as St. Petersburg in general, could not have been achieved simply by foreigners, but was a uniquely Russian invention and was the result of Russian uniqueness and ingenuity. Thus, the stone has come to represent something remarkably different than its transportation to and erection in St. Petersburg. Though perhaps even more ironic than the fact that this was, as stated, a multinational effort, is the fact that the statue of the individual that the space supports, that of Peter the Great, represents a figure who many criticize for opening up Russia to the West and tainting the concept of a unique Russian identity. Nevertheless, in addition to being a surprisingly interesting boulder to conduct research on, for many, the Thunderstone and the mythology behind it stands today as a testament to the uniqueness of Russian ingenuity and engineering feat.